Dear parents, listen. This is the part many don't like to hear, but it's the truth. The goal of parenting is not to raise children who need you forever, it's to raise adults who can stand even when you are gone. And most importantly, teach them that love is not about giving everything, it's about preparing them for anything. Because when you hand your children everything without effort, you rob them of strength. When you shield them from discomfort, you deny them resilience. When you never say no, you teach them that the world will always say yes. And when you reward bad behavior, you prepare them for failure. Before we continue, please like and subscribe to my channel to support my growth. Thanks. Somewhere in the bustling city of Portsville, two families lived on opposite sides of life. One was the Carters, wealthy, influential, and respected. The other was the Walkers, poor, struggling, but deeply rooted in values, discipline, and faith. Mr. and Mrs. Carter had everything money could buy. They lived in a mansion that looked like a palace, drove expensive cars, and their children, Daniel and Olivia, attended the most prestigious schools in the city. They had private tutors, personal maids, drivers, and every gadget imaginable. They lacked nothing, except one thing: real preparation for life. On the other side of town, in a small two-room apartment with peeling paint and a leaking roof, lived Mr. and Mrs. Walker with their three children, James, Mary, and Samuel. Life was hard. Mr. Walker worked as a mechanic, and Mrs. Walker sold vegetables in the open market. Every day was a struggle to keep food on the table and pay school fees. But despite the hardship, they gave their children something more valuable than money: responsibility, discipline, and resilience. Daniel and Olivia grew up believing the world revolved around them. They never made their beds, never washed their plates, and never lifted a finger in the house. If they wanted anything, a new phone, new sneakers, the latest game console, they simply asked and got it. And if their parents said no, they would throw tantrums until they got their way. The Carters believed they were doing the right thing. "We don't want our children to suffer the way we did," Mr. Carter often said proudly. "They should enjoy life," Mrs. Carter would add. "After all, that's why we work so hard." But deep down, without realizing it, they were raising Daniel and Olivia in a bubble, a soft, comfortable bubble that shielded them from responsibility, discipline, and consequences. The children never heard the word no. They never faced discomfort. They never learned patience. They never solved a problem on their own. Meanwhile, across town, life looked very different for the Walker children. James, the eldest, was only 14 when his father took him to the mechanic workshop during holidays. There, he learned how to change tires, fix engines, and negotiate with customers. He also cleaned the workshop, swept the floor, and sometimes delivered spare parts to nearby shops. It wasn't easy, but it taught him the dignity of labor. Mary, the second child, loved music. At church, she joined the choir and quickly learned how to play the keyboard. She read Bible lessons on Sundays and sometimes led children's programs. Her leadership skills grew naturally. By the time she was 15, she was already teaching younger children how to play instruments. Samuel, the youngest, followed his mother to the market every weekend. He carried baskets, arranged vegetables, learned how to bargain, and even assisted customers. He also joined the Boys' Brigade in church, where he learned discipline, teamwork, and public speaking. Life was hard, but it was shaping them, preparing them for a future where strength, wisdom, and resilience would matter far more than luxury. While Daniel and Olivia spent their long vacations at expensive resorts or video gaming for hours, James and Mary spent theirs learning skills. James started learning automobile repair while still in secondary school. His father's friend, Mr. Edwards, took him as an apprentice. After school each day, James would rush to the workshop. He got home tired and greasy but fulfilled. By 16, he could repair small cars on his own and earned small money fixing neighbors' motorcycles. Mary also started sewing clothes under the mentorship of Mrs. Grace, a tailor who attended their church. At first, she learned how to thread needles and cut fabrics. Later, she began sewing simple dresses and school uniforms. Before finishing secondary school, she was already earning money from classmates who asked her to make clothes for them. Their classmates sometimes laughed at them. "Why are you wasting your time?" they mocked. "Just focus on your books like us." But James and Mary smiled. They knew they were not just going to school, they were preparing for life. Years passed, and the inevitable happened. Both the Carter and Walker children ended up in the same university. Daniel and Olivia, with all their privileges, were admitted through their parents' influence. James and Mary gained admission through hard work and scholarships. Samuel was still in secondary school but was already earning money fixing phones. On campus, life changed. Daniel and Olivia struggled. They had no one to wake them up for lectures, no one to remind them to do assignments, and no driver to take them to class. They didn't know how to wash their clothes or cook. They spent their allowances recklessly, and before the semester ended, they were broke, borrowing money from classmates. James and Mary, however, adapted easily. James repaired students' laptops and phones for money. Mary sewed clothes for fellow students and even made outfits for graduation ceremonies. They didn't beg for money, they created opportunities. They didn't panic when faced with challenges, they solved problems. Within 2 years, they were among the most respected students on campus. They ran small businesses, led student organizations, and inspired others. Their church involvement had sharpened their public speaking and leadership skills, so they confidently spoke at events and led projects. They were poor, but powerful. One afternoon, Daniel called his father. "Dad," he said, "I need more money. My allowance is finished." "Already, Mr. Carter asked. "What did you do with the last one?" "I don't know. I just need more." Mr. Carter sighed. He sent the money, again, and again, and again. Olivia wasn't any better. She struggled with anxiety and depression because she couldn't handle failure. The moment a lecturer scolded her, she broke down crying. She switched courses twice because it was too hard. She lacked resilience. Meanwhile, James had started a small auto repair business with 2 classmates. They rented a small space near the campus gate and serviced students' cars. The business grew, and by his final year, James was earning enough to pay his rent and even support his siblings. Mary also grew her tailoring business. She employed 2 junior students to help with sewing. During Fashion Week on campus, she showcased her designs and was featured in a local newspaper. She even received an offer from a fashion brand before graduating. Graduation came, and reality hit harder. Daniel and Olivia expected their parents to arrange jobs for them. But the economy had changed. Connections were no longer enough. Companies wanted skills, creativity, resilience, qualities they lacked. For months, they sat at home, frustrated and confused. "I studied business administration," Daniel complained. "Why won't anyone hire me?" "Because you have no experience," one interviewer told him. "You've never worked a day in your life." Olivia faced rejection after rejection. She eventually accepted a low-paying job she hated, but even then, she struggled with basic tasks. James and Mary, on the other hand, didn't bother looking for jobs. They were already self-employed. James expanded his workshop and opened a second branch. Mary launched her clothing line and started selling online. Samuel, now a skilled phone technician, opened a repair shop and trained others. They had no godfathers, no rich uncles, no family connections, but they didn't need any. Life had prepared them. The Carter mansion, once filled with laughter, luxury, and endless spending, grew quieter as the years rolled by. Mr. Carter's company, a multi-million-dollar construction firm, had been the pride of the family for decades. It was his legacy, his life's work, his crown jewel. But one rainy Monday morning, that empire began to crumble. The signs had been there for years: declining profits, bad management decisions, and the worst mistake of all, Daniel and Olivia. Mr. Carter had always believed his children would take over the family business. He had groomed Daniel to become the managing director and Olivia to handle public relations. But there was a problem. Daniel lacked discipline, and Olivia lacked commitment. Meetings bored them. Reports overwhelmed them. Difficult decisions scared them. They were used to comfort, not responsibility. They came late to work, skipped important client meetings, and relied on managers to do everything. When board members raised concerns, Mr. Carter defended them. "They're still learning," he would say. "They just need time," Mrs. Carter added. But time ran out. Within 3 years, the company had lost 3 major contracts. Clients complained about delays, poor service, and unprofessional behavior from Daniel's team. Olivia's reckless spending on marketing campaigns that brought no results drained millions. Loans piled up, investors pulled out, and competitors overtook them. One morning, Mr. Carter sat in his office, staring at a financial report. The numbers were terrifying. Red ink everywhere. "We are going bankrupt," his accountant whispered. "If we don't cut costs and restructure now, we'll lose everything." The news spread like wildfire. Carter and Sons Construction, once a powerhouse, was now on the verge of collapse. Business partners distanced themselves. Bankers stopped taking calls. Even close friends who used to beg for contracts suddenly stopped visiting. At first, Mr. Carter thought it was a temporary setback. He believed someone would step in. A friend, a former client, maybe a government official. But no one did. It was then he realized the painful truth. His wealth had bought him companions, not friends. Worse still, the children he had pampered and protected were completely helpless. "Dad, what are we going to do?" Daniel asked one evening, his voice trembling. "What do you mean, we?" Mr. Carter replied, exhausted. "You were the MD. What can you do?" Daniel had no answer. Olivia burst into tears. "I don't know how to help. I don't know anything about running a company." That was the truth. They knew nothing. They couldn't manage finances. They couldn't negotiate contracts. They couldn't handle pressure. They had no skills, no ideas, no resilience. And now, they were adults. Adults who could not even provide for themselves, let alone for their parents. Their expensive degrees meant nothing in the real world. Their childhood comfort had left them soft and unprepared. Their sense of entitlement made them believe help would always come. But it didn't. 2 years later, the Carter mansion was sold to pay off debts. The luxury cars were auctioned. The family moved into a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet part of town. Daniel, now 28, was still unemployed. He had attended dozens of interviews but failed most of them. "You don't have the skills we're looking for," employers told him. "You have the degree, but you lack practical experience." Olivia tried starting a business with the little money her father gave her, but she spent it all on branding, a fancy office, and interior decor, not on strategy or product. The business collapsed in 6 months. Now they sat at home, scrolling through their phones, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Mr. Carter, once respected and powerful, was now a shadow of himself. His blood pressure was high, his sleep was poor, and his heart ached every time he looked at his children. "I gave them everything," he whispered to his wife one night. "Everything except what they truly needed." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, the Walker children's lives had taken a completely different turn. James had expanded his automobile business into a full-fledged vehicle service company. He employed 15 people, including engineers and marketers. Big clients trusted him because he was reliable, disciplined, and skilled. He even serviced vehicles for government fleets. Mary had opened a fashion school and boutique. She was now a respected designer, dressing celebrities and public figures. Her leadership skills from church made her a confident entrepreneur, and her sewing talent, once mocked, was now her goldmine. Samuel, the youngest, had turned his phone repair business into a tech hub. He partnered with phone companies, trained over 200 young people, and became a sought-after speaker at youth events. All three of them supported their parents financially. They built a new house for Mr. and Mrs. Walker, sent them on vacations, and ensured they lacked nothing. Poverty was now a story of the past. And they did it without connections, without handouts, without godfathers. They did it because life prepared them. One sunny afternoon, years after the company collapsed, Mr. Carter was walking home from a small consultancy job he had taken to stay busy. As he passed a busy auto repair center, he heard a familiar voice. "Mr. Carter, is that really you?" He turned around. It was James Walker, now a successful businessman. "James," Mr. Carter exclaimed, "look at you. You've done well for yourself." James smiled. "By God's grace, sir. I learned early that no one will hand me anything. I had to build it." Mr. Carter's heart sank. He remembered when James used to visit their home as Daniel's classmate, the shy boy from the poor neighborhood. And now, that same boy was richer, stronger, and more successful than his own children. James noticed the sadness on Mr. Carter's face. "Sir, are Daniel and Olivia okay?" Mr. Carter sighed. "They're at home, still searching for themselves. They don't even know how to live without help." There was a pause. Then James said something Mr. Carter would never forget. "Sir, poverty wasn't our curse, it was our classroom." That night, Mr. Carter couldn't sleep. James's words echoed in his head. He realized that in trying to protect his children from struggle, he had robbed them of strength. In trying to give them happiness, he had taken away their hunger. And in trying to secure their future, he had sabotaged it. He remembered how he laughed when Daniel refused to do chores. How he defended Olivia when teachers complained. How he bought them new phones to stop their tantrums. How he told himself, "I don't want my children to suffer." But now, they were suffering more than he ever imagined, not because of poverty, but because of unpreparedness. Daniel was now 31, still living with his parents, applying for jobs he was never qualified for. Olivia was 29, still dependent on monthly allowances, posting selfies on social media with quotes about living her best life, while secretly battling depression. Mr. Carter and his wife, now in their 60s, could no longer work as hard as they once did. Their health was declining, and the savings were running out. They had no one to lean on, because the very children they had hoped would care for them could not even care for themselves. And the world, it moved on. Their rich friends stopped calling. The business partners forgot about them. The mansion, the cars, the empire, gone. The Carter home had grown silent. The kind of silence that follows broken dreams and heavy regret. The grand gates that once welcomed guests in luxury now stood rusted and quiet. The laughter of family dinners had faded into arguments and excuses. Daniel, now 34, still lived under his parents' roof. Olivia, 31, had moved back home after yet another failed business attempt. Their childhood of comfort had raised them into adults who knew everything about enjoyment but almost nothing about endurance. And the most painful part, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, now aged and tired, had no one else to blame but themselves. One cold evening, the power went out again. Mr. Carter sighed as he lit a candle in the small living room. "Daniel," he called, "did you remember to buy diesel for the generator?" Daniel didn't look up from his phone. "I forgot." Mr. Carter's voice trembled. "We talked about it this morning." "I'll go tomorrow," Daniel muttered lazily. "Tomorrow," Mr. Carter snapped. "Do you know we have food spoiling in the freezer? Must I remind you of everything?" Daniel shrugged. "You always do." The words stabbed Mr. Carter deeper than any knife. "You always do." That was the story of their lives. He and his wife had always done everything. They had solved every problem, paid every bill, made every decision. Their children had never needed to try. Now, when they truly needed help, those same children had nothing to give. The Carters' situation worsened. The little savings they had were gone. Medical bills piled up. Mr. Carter's health grew fragile, and his wife developed arthritis that made walking difficult. Daniel couldn't afford to fix his old car, and Olivia was drowning in debt from a business loan she couldn't repay. Then came the day that broke their pride completely. They received a letter from the landlord demanding they vacate the house they were renting. The property, which used to belong to them, had been sold long ago. They had missed 3 months' rent. They had just 2 weeks to leave. That evening, Mr. Carter sat on the edge of his bed, holding the letter with trembling hands. "How did it come to this?" he whispered. His wife sat beside him, tears rolling down her cheeks. "We thought we were protecting them." "No," he said bitterly, "we were destroying them." 3 days later, a knock echoed through the house. Olivia opened the door and froze. "James," she whispered. There he was, James Walker. The boy from the poor family. The one she once mocked for, smelling like engine oil. Now he stood tall, confident, and well-dressed, with a calm smile that came from a life built with purpose. "I heard about your situation," James said gently. "May I come in?" Olivia nodded silently. Mr. and Mrs. Carter were embarrassed when James entered the house. They had once looked down on his family. They had once told Daniel to choose better friends. Now that same boy had come to visit them out of compassion. "Sir," James said, taking a seat, "I want you to know something. And even though things are tough now, it's not the end. I want to help." "Help?" Mr. Carter's voice cracked. "Why would you help us?" James smiled. "Because your son is my friend, and because once upon a time, I was the boy no one believed in. But I learned that the best way to rise is to lift others." Over the next few weeks, James helped the Carter family move into a small apartment he owned. He offered Daniel a position at his automobile company, not as a manager, but as a trainee technician. It was humiliating for Daniel at first. "Me, work with my hands," he protested. "I studied business administration." James didn't sugarcoat his reply. "Yes, but right now, your certificate won't feed you. Skills will, humility will, and this is your chance to start over." Daniel reluctantly accepted. The first weeks were hard. The heat, the sweat, the manual labor. But slowly, something inside him changed. For the first time in his life, he was earning money, not just receiving it. Mary offered Olivia a role in her fashion company. It wasn't glamorous, organizing fabrics, learning how to sew, running errands, but it was work. At first, Olivia complained daily. But over time, she learned the basics of business from the ground up. The very people the Carter children once pitied had now become their teachers. Months turned into a year, and the change was undeniable. For the first time in their lives, both siblings were creating value. They were solving problems, earning respect, and building self-esteem, things money alone had never given them. And something else changed too, their hearts. They became more empathetic, more grateful, more grounded. They apologized to their parents for years of irresponsibility and promised to take care of them in their old age. Years later, James Walker's company became one of the top automobile service providers in the region. Mary's fashion brand went international. Samuel launched a tech startup that revolutionized phone repairs in rural communities. And Daniel, he became the company's chief operating officer, not because his father's money opened the door, but because he earned it. Olivia launched her own fashion label, partnering with Mary as a co-designer. They had finally grown up, not in age, but in character. One sunny afternoon, at a large business conference, James took the stage as the keynote speaker. Thousands listened as he shared his journey from poverty to purpose. And in the front row, tears streaming down his cheeks, Mr. Carter sat watching. Not out of envy this time, but out of pride. Pride that the boy his children once mocked had become their greatest blessing. Pride that his children had learned, even if late, the lessons he should have taught them long ago. Parents, this story is not fiction. It is life. It happens every day, in cities, in towns, in families just like yours. Wealth is not a bad thing. Comfort is not a sin. But if your wealth removes responsibility, if your love removes discipline, if your protection removes resilience, you are not preparing your children, you are disabling them. Let them work. Let them fail. Let them try and try again. Let them carry small responsibilities now so they can carry great ones later. Teach them to wash their dishes. Teach them to cook their meals. Teach them to serve others. Teach them that no is not the end, it's the beginning of creativity. Because one day, you will grow old. One day, you will need them. And on that day, they will either be your strength, or your burden. The Carter family learned that lesson the hard way. You don't have to. The end. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Your time means the world to me, and I don't take it for granted. Every view, every like, every comment, they encourage me more than you can imagine. I pray that as you support me, God will support you too. May favor find you, may joy never depart from your life, and may all your dreams come true. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to support my growth. Stay safe, stay blessed, see you next time. Bye bye.